Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 48 of the Pet Behavior Chat. So I have Nora with me here today, which obviously means that we're going to be talking kitty cats. And today we're going to talk about feline resources. So feline resources are one of the 5 pillars of a healthy feline environment, which we spoke about in episode 18. So if you'd like to get kind of the big picture view of the 5 pillars of a healthy feline environment, what we think are the 5 cornerstones that cats need to have a happy environment and to have an environment that meets all of their behavioral needs, then go back and have a listen to episode 18. And today we want to take a deep dive into one of those 5 pillars, which is the pillar about feline resources. And how it's actually worded in the ISFM guidelines is multiple and separated resources. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. And I think obviously the first thing that we're going to do is explain to you or define to you what are resources and then why they're so important to cats. And then we'll kind of just take it from there. And I think one of the things I just want to mention before I turn it over to Nora is, so this is one of the things that we recommend every single feline behavior consultation. So one of the foundational pieces is optimizing the environment according to those 5 pillars, and the resources are a really big part of that. So no matter what behavioral presentation you're faced with, this piece is going to apply to pretty much every cat in every circumstance. So it's a really important thing to know, and a really great thing that you can kind of start to either implement yourself if you're a cat owner, or to perhaps recommend to your clients if you're a vet or a veterinary nurse listening. So yeah, that was a lot of chat from me. Hi, Nora. Lovely to have you back.
Thank you. It's always great to be back.
And to talk about kitty cats. Do you want to, first of all, chat us through what falls under that heading of feline resources? What are the feline resources? What are the things that every cat needs in their lives?
Sure. So the way I explain it normally to clients is resources are the important things in your cat's life, the things they live for. And I would include under that their food, their water, their litter trays. And I always include those immediately after food and water. I think that's a really important one. Resting spaces, heights, but also you as the owner are also a resource. So those are the sort of main resources I think of. Scratching places, I'm sure probably missing a few that you can add, but those would be the ones that I consider. And I think food and water and litter for me are the most important as far as addressing the behavioral needs of our feline patients.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you kind of hit them all there. Scratches was one I was thinking of. And I think also resting places and sleeping places are different, and hiding spots, I would also probably say, are different. So hiding, resting, sleeping, but yeah, and toys, although that's almost kind of a separate pillar in itself. But I guess, yeah, toys might fall under that a little bit as well. Mm-hmm. So you're the person who usually, when we do a feline behavior consultation, you're the person that usually is the one that kind of chats the client through this particular piece of the puzzle. So I know that, you know, you're amazing at going actually into homes and spaces and looking at those spaces and looking at where the resources are and how we can kind of optimize where they are and how they're placed. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that, just about kind of optimizing and maybe the number of resources that we think about and how you would kind of approach that in a case?
Sure. I was just thinking of a new job title when you said that, and it's like Cat Interior Designer, as I do. I like going in, seeing what's there already for the cat, realizing what they actually need, and then making those compromises with the owners and that. And sometimes you have to get a bit creative because not everybody wants to have a house that is predominantly filled with cat things. But if we want to make our cats happy and we want to give them everything that we need, we do need to find that compromise. So what I would typically do on a home visit is have a look around, see what is available for the cat or cats, and depending on the population in the house, that will really dictate how many we need. So the basic rule of thumb for cat resources is there should at least, and it's always at least I would say, be 1 per cat plus 1. So for a 1 cat household, you should have 2 water sources, 2 food bowls, 2 of everything, 2 litter trays, and on from there. So 4 cat house, 5 of everything. Now, I'd really always emphasize that at least, because that's hitting the bare minimum really for their needs. The more, the better. So the more opportunities you can give your cat, the more choice. I think it's really about choice, that the cats in the home have a variety of places they can use for the litter, a variety of places they can access water from. I would have the level definitely higher than that minimum, especially if there's any behavioral issues going on. So depending on the layout of the apartment or the home, it's quite fun to kind of get creative and see what will work for that individual, for the cats, and to use the different spaces. And it's so individual, because you'll have some owners who, let's say, absolutely will not have a litter tray in their personal bathroom, or they absolutely will not have in their kitchen. And that's their choices, and everybody has their own boundaries and what's going to work with them and their cat. So it's really quite fun to be able to find out on a person-to-person level what will work, and then implementing those things. I would like very much to have variety with the resources too. So for example, a water source. Ideally, I would love that there's a fountain, a glass bowl, maybe a pint glass, if that's something the cat has showed preference to before, that there's difference even within that one resource, that there's a variety, because we know that cats do like to have the ability to choose. So to have the same water dish over and over is definitely addressing the numbers game, but it's not necessarily giving them that freedom of choice of how they would like their water.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you raised such an important point. And I know we're talking about cats today, but this kind of goes pretty much for most of our domestic animals and animals that we live with. That control and that agency and that choice is such a massive piece, because essentially we control pretty much all of our pets' lives. The majority of the things within that life we control whether they're able to reproduce or not. We're able to control at what time they eat, which is at the time that we feed them, unless they're a cat and they go out and perhaps hunt something for themselves. But we control, where they're able to rest, where they're able to sleep, which rooms they have access to. Like you say, we control where their elimination areas are within the space. So we control a lot. So it's really important that we kind of release that a little bit wherever we can, and how it's appropriate for each individual in each home, to give the cats some of that control and choice back again. So yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. That's absolutely one of the most important pieces.
I think too, the whole numbers and the variety also plays a part in the topic we spoke of before, which is the preventative behavior medicine, because especially with multi-cat households, having a limited number of resources can for sure build tensions. Even if we don't have cats that fight, even if we haven't had aggressive incidences, there can absolutely be tensions building because of their perceived lack of resources. Something I see in my house, one of my cats has his preferred water bowl, and he will rest by that water bowl quite a bit and essentially block it from the other cat. He looks very sweet as he's doing it, but I know what he's doing. And so I have to make sure that there is plenty around so that my other cat can easily access water wherever she wants. So it's that, these resources and adding them, it's not just about addressing where there is a difficulty in your home. It's really about providing them everything they need to prevent issues in the future too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things, as I'm sure we've talked about so much in the past, we see so many inter-cat aggression cases over here in the UAE due to, many different factors, including the large sort of stray population that we have. And people wanting to, do a good deed for those stray cats and bring them into their homes. And so I totally agree, that kind of preventative behavioral medicine piece, which we're really encouraging everybody to think more about. Prevention is always better than having to address things after the fact, is hugely important. And I think you're right with cats in particular, dogs as well to some degree, that the importance of the resources and how important it is to them to safeguard those resources is quite interesting. And I love the example that you gave there about your own cat and blocking resources, which is what we see frequently. I think the most extreme case of that is one cat blocking the other cat's ability to enter or exit the litter box, or actually stalking them or watching them as they're using the litter box. And that, of course, can then lead to litter box issues. So cats eliminating outside of the litter box because it's just too uncomfortable for them to be stalked or watched, or to not even be able to actually access the litter box. So yeah, that's a huge piece. I agree.
Mm-hmm. And I think I'm sure we'll talk about litter trays a lot, but what's so important is within all these resources to think it's almost like this little umbrella system with all the resources. We could actually talk about each one for a full podcast, like what are the preferences? Yeah. So because we touched on water, for example, like we know, and we implement this in the clinic too, that cats don't particularly like to have their whiskers touch the edge. So we want to get quite a wide brimmed or a shallow bowl, or that some prefer the running water, and it needs to be clean. So lots of people buy the fountains and they don't clean them as regularly as they should, and then they said they don't use them. It's looking at every resource, how you can optimize each one as well. So same obviously goes for litters.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now we've set the scene a little bit. We're not going to do a super deep dive into each resource, but I do want to talk about each of the resources in turn, just so that we get a bit of an understanding of, what's included in that kind of spectrum of resources, and also what can we do quite easily to, very quickly optimize the feline environment. So do you want to get started on maybe food and water stations?
Yeah, so I think most importantly is that food and water ideally should be separated. In nature, cats typically wouldn't eat and drink in the same place. And there's some thoughts on that, but it's definitely that potentially contaminated food could damage the water they're drinking, and they just wouldn't do it. It's just not their natural way. So really important to separate food and water. So we definitely don't recommend those little dual bowls for food and water. Mm-hmm. And I would have them spread throughout the home, and depending on your cat's ability level and the areas they like, it's nice to have them at a height as well. It's absolutely great to have food and water at a height if you have other pets in the home, or if you have kids in the home. Height is safe. So having food and water there is fantastic. Another reason to have these separated is that cats typically wouldn't eat together. Even if they are friends with each other, they wouldn't share a mealtime like that, right next to each other. And it's very easy for us to feed everybody in the same place, but it's much nicer for them to be able to spread out and have their meals on their own. So I would definitely offer a variety of places to eat and a variety of eating options. So personally, I would always recommend owners to use different puzzle feeders in their home. There's so many ones that are on the market that you can get that are quite easy, or you can make some. But it is a really great opportunity to add enrichment to your cat's life, to have every access to food be some form of enrichment or puzzle feeder. So there's towers you can use, or little mice, or you can just use a towel and fold up food within it. But to actually make every feeding station a little bit different, offer a little bit of challenge, a little bit unique to each other is just an extra thing that you can do. So you want to have that abundance of resources. You want to have lots of food options, but making them different as well is a great way to keep your cat's brain engaged and active, especially if they don't have the opportunity to go outside and hunt. They're actually able to act out their natural born hunting instincts there with the food. So if I was going into a home and adding resources, it would be resources that are also cat friendly. So resources that help the cat to act out its natural instinct. That's something we like to do in clinic as well. So it's really important for hospitalized cats or long-term boarding patients that they also have puzzle feeders and a little bit of challenge. They want to be challenged. That's who they are, to find their food. So having even something simple like an ice cube tray, we use a lot in clinic. So we have cats recovering from routine surgeries, and we offer them food in those, and it just sort of adds a little bit to their experience here, that it's not just in a bowl put in front of them, but they have to work for it, which is what they want to do.
Yeah, which is that wonderful phenomenon of contra freeloading, which I think can be difficult for us to kind of grasp, is that the majority of animals would actually prefer to work for their food. And I think cats are so very unique in that, hunting, that whole hunting behavior is such an important part of their behavioral repertoire and their spectrum of behaviors, that it's really important, especially if, like you say, they can't go outside, that we provide them the opportunity to be able to perform those behaviors in an indoor setting as well.
Something that I see a lot, and this is something that I even feel myself, is I think with our very busy lives, and a lot of cat owners became cat owners because they have busy lives and they perceive it as a bit of an easy pet or self-sufficient pet, is that a lot of us feel very guilty for not doing enough for a cat, for not playing with them enough. I mean, I hear that all the time. I don't get to play with them enough. I don't get to do these things enough. And the way we feed is such an easy way that you can give so much to your cat by adding, these enrichment options, by only feeding through puzzle feeders. It allows you to really truly give your cat what they need, even if you don't always have the time to be physically present and play in that. So I think they're really the way to go.
Yeah, because you're feeding your cat anyway, right? Like, you have to feed them anyway. And it's not that big of a leap from popping the food into a bowl versus popping it into a puzzle feeder. It's not going to take, any additional kind of time or effort to do that. So that's a great tip. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to litter boxes. Let us know what you think of that. And what do you frequently encounter in homes when you look at litter box setups?
Okay, so litter trays, and I know the podcast on them before, but we all know we know the litter tray rules and the size that they should be, and the ideals that most cats have with them. Now, the things that I see most when I go into homes is that litter trays are too small and that they're placed inappropriately. So we always recommend that a cat's litter tray should be at least 1.5 the length of them. And if you think of a typical adult cat, that's quite big. So you want them to be able to have the space to turn around and move and do what they need to do there. Also, you want it to be big enough that if there's multiple use before it's been cleaned, that they still have a suitable area to use. So I often go in and I see litter boxes that were obviously bought for a kitten and would be perfectly suitable for a 6-week-old kitten being used for adult cats. So that really, and I try to liken it to sometimes, if we had to use a child's potty or something, it's just not ideal and it's going to cause stress. So the bigger, the better for litter trays. I also see quite a bit of homes where they say, no, I have enough litter trays. I have 4 litter trays, but they're all together in one spot. So in one perfect storage area or bathroom, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So to us and to cats, that would be considered one litter tray area. So spreading them out, again, that pillar of multiple and separate resources, they should be spread out. There's a number of different reasons for that. We know cats wouldn't typically urinate and defecate in the same place outside. They want those options. Also, if it's a multi-cat household, they need the availability of different places to go that's not near another cat. But also, and this is very much for particularly young or particularly old animals, arthritic animals, sometimes if your house is of certain size or there's stairs, it can be very inconvenient for a cat to get to the place that you think is fine to go. So having, upstairs and downstairs and both ends of the house is really important, just so that the cats don't experience any stress, anxiety about getting to the actual litter tray. So it should be convenient for them. And I also find, similar to that, when the ideal place for owners tends to be in a normally a bathroom or a storage room with a hallway or a doorway going into it that sometimes can be closed. And also, again, in multi-cat households, access can be blocked. So I think really making sure that they are out and about is good. Having said that, the other mistake, kind of opposite end, is that sometimes litter trays are put right in the middle of a thoroughfare, so right in the middle of the busiest hallway, and don't provide any sort of privacy for the cats. So I think it's quite a challenge sometimes finding those perfect places. And having, the correct litter tray, which would be a big one, in a place that's suitable in the home. But we've seen some amazing ones on home visits over time, ones that have ladders going into them and ones that are very beautiful from the outside. Like, there's a lot that people can do now to actually make litter trays a little bit more acceptable for their home, as long as they're still meeting all of the litter tray rules as cats would have it.
Yeah, I love that. And what I often try and imagine, if I go into a case or a situation where we've got litter box issues, is I imagine the route that the cat has to take to get to the litter box. So I physically kind of put myself in the cat's paws, and I imagine, okay, if I'm here at my favorite resting spot, because we usually know, where each cat's favorite resting spot is. If I'm here at my favorite resting spot and I want to use the litter tray, or I need to use the litter tray, what is the route that I have to take to get there? And that often gives us a really good idea about, it could be like Nora said, that they have to kind of pass through the busiest area in the house where there might be, lots of kids, or, the other cats or the dogs perhaps, or maybe they have to walk past the dog's resting area, or maybe they have to pass all of the other cats that are in the multi-cat household to get there. And that gives us a bit of an idea of, why perhaps there might be litter box issues, but it also gives us an idea of where we can relocate that litter box to in order to make that journey easier or shorter, or, I sometimes think about the cats kind of having to run the gauntlet almost, right? It's like doing a bit of an obstacle course to get to their litter box. And so it makes perfect sense that they would choose somewhere that's much easier to access. So yeah, that's one way I like to think about that particular thing. And the other thing I love that you said, we so often get questionnaires back. So before we go on any kind of cat consultation, behavior consultation, we have the client fill in a pretty lengthy questionnaire. And one of the questions on there is all about litter boxes. And many a time they'll say they've got 3, 4, 5 litter boxes in the home. Yet when we actually see where they're located, whether that's on a home visit or, through a video that the client sends to us, if it's a virtual consultation, we'll see that those litter boxes, as Nora said, are all lined up in one row. And it's now to the point where I actually have to kind of smile to myself when I see that, because we see it so frequently. And essentially, as Nora said, that's one litter box. So, the owner said they have 4 or 5 litter boxes, and they do have 4 or 5 physically separated litter boxes, just they're all next to each other. And from the cat's point of view, and again, we always have to see things from the cat's point of view, that's essentially one litter box. So, those situations are actually sometimes really rewarding, because sometimes it's, something as simple as that, as separating those litter boxes, providing more in better locations throughout the home, as long as it's appropriate to the client. It can be a relatively simple fix, which is always, nice for us and the cats as well, to be able to get that piece right for them.
Yeah, and something else that is funny is sometimes litter box changes only come when there's a problem, and they should come sooner. So I have so many clients that maybe they've got 3 cats and one litter tray, and because all of those cats choose to use that litter tray, they don't see that there's any problems. Like, no, they're fine. They use the litter tray. There's no litter tray problem. It is still worth adding them and giving the cats what we know to be their optimal toileting environment. Cats are the most amazing animal, and they will compromise with us, and they're very clean animals, and many of them will compromise and use that one litter tray with the other cats. Does not mean that that's their preferred option, and that does not mean that they are happy about it just because they do. So I do hear that a lot when I recommend, sometimes at the very start before we really dive deeper into it. Clients say, no, they're fine with the litter tray, but fine is one thing, but giving them actually what they want is another.
Yeah, that's a great point for sure. All right, I think we can move on from litter boxes. Should we talk a little bit about scratching areas?
Yep. So I think scratching posts are one of the most amazing things you can get for your cats. we know that cats need to be able to scratch. Not only do they sharpen their little nails there, but they're also depositing pheromones when they do that, marking their territory, and it's a very positive thing for them. This is another place where compromise comes in as far as what we as owners are happy with them doing in our home, i.e. to our curtains or couch, as opposed to what the cat needs, which is to be able to do that. So scratching posts in the home or scratching options are a really great resource. Cats like to be able to extend fully horizontally and scratch, and also vertically. So we do see lots of scratching posts on the market, again, made for little kittens, and cats do outgrow those. So really, like a litter tray, the bigger the better, I think, for a scratching post. These are, I guess, ideally placed at the parameters of your home as well, because they are used for territorial marking. I always find the nicest place for them is by a window. So the window is obviously at the parameter of their territory, if they're a house cat, but it also just gives them that nice experience and view and height. Like, there's so many things going together with a scratching post, right? They get to act out their natural instinct. They get to mark their territory. They get to have a high vantage point, and if it's a nice one, they have a resting point there too. So it's kind of like all these things come together with a nice scratching post, and they're really beautiful now. I mean, you can get really, really nice ones, but I think that they are such a good tool to have to immediately increase the quality of life for your cat.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's actually a little bit of research behind scratch posts, looking at, what were the scratch posts that most cats preferred, and the rope kind of substrate. So the ropes that are tied around a post seem to be the favorite, with a wide base so that they don't rock when the cats kind of lean up against them and scratch on them. So yeah, there's a little bit of science that goes into the optimal scratching post as well. But I love what you said, and this almost takes us on to the next area, that a scratching post can incorporate so many different things. So you've obviously got the scratching, but also the resting and maybe even hiding areas as well, because you can get some posts that have those little boxes that cats can kind of hide away in. So why don't we talk about resting areas? What do you see there?
I think the most common thing I see is owners who buy very beautiful beds, and they say, my cat doesn't use that bed. They use this place and random resting places. And yeah, I think I would have to be one of those cat owners too. My cats kind of rest where they want to. But I guess it's more about identifying those places. So is there a particular room in the home where they spend a lot of time, and why? Is it because it's a quiet space or just away from things, or maybe it's because it's near you, and providing them nice resting spots there. So having that lovely bed that you got there, where does you want them, with some catnip and pheromones and those sort of things to encourage them to use it. But I do believe that cats' resting place is also where they decide it will be, and that we can just create that safe place around that and allow that to be their place. I think it's really important to recognize, again, with aging cats, to be able to let them have access to those places. So we see, arthritis so frequently in cats over the age of 12, and sometimes it can take a while for that actually to be recognized and diagnosed. But it's a good bet if you have a cat over that age that they may be experiencing some early symptoms. So just to help them out a little bit, giving them steps up to their favorite resting spot, or moving it down lower if you notice that they're not as inclined to go where they used to. So I think constantly evaluating their access to these areas as well. And doors and houses, and again, thinking of my own home, and having kids in the house and opening and closing doors, and just sort of setting some rules, that there's always access, or that there's always no access to certain places. Like mommy and daddy's room is for the cats to escape during the day. We don't go in there. Actually just protecting the space around where they choose their safe space to be.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing tips there from somebody who's living that experience, where you do have a busy home, and making sure that everybody sort of gets their opportunity to find a safe place and rest comfortably. So I don't know about you, but certainly my cats have completely different kind of daytime resting places to where they choose to sleep at night. Some of them are the same. I know that sometimes the squidge, she likes to rest on the cat tree during the day, and she'll also sleep there at night. But Lizzie, my other little cat, so she'll come up at night and sleep on one of the little poofs that we have next to our bed, and that's not her sort of resting place during the day. So I think it's really important that we differentiate between resting and sleeping places and understand where they might be different, and having those same rules about the sleeping places that we have around the resting places as well, is that there's always access to them, and that they're comfortable, and that the cats can kind of rest, can sleep there easily during the night. What does that look like in your home?
So we have found that the cats prefer to rest and sleep in our bedroom.
Okay.
They definitely sleep in bed with us all night, and they do return there a few times throughout the day as well to rest. But they tend to be they like to be where we are when it comes to rest and sleep. So when we're sitting on the couch at night, watching TV, both of them will be there. When we move up to the bed, they move up to the bed. And funnily enough, if they're not with us, they actually go into my daughter's rooms to sleep. So I think that's because the kids' rooms with all the stuffed animals and blankets and stuff like that, and we know cats are connoisseurs of comfort, so they're a very attractive room, and when the kids are sleeping, that's ideal for them to actually be in there. So yeah, I think that they tend to like somewhere quiet, and when it is just the grown-up time, it is quiet. When it's busy and there's kids around, they will take themselves off normally to the guest room, which isn't really used, and they rest there. So I think it seems in my house that definitely quiet places are favored. So I suppose looking at that as far as advice is always making sure that there is a quiet space available for them.
Yeah.
So they can opt in or out of the activity if they want to.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. And I also think looking and seeing whether your cat prefers to rest up high or down low, or maybe in something. So that's another sort of individual difference that we see, that some cats absolutely love being up high and have kind of a safe sort of vantage spot and resting area. I know on top of the fridge is a really popular area for some cats. But similarly, other cats like being low, so they like being under things. I had one client where the most kind of fought over resting place in the area was kind of sort of on a little ledge underneath a coffee table. And then I also think resting places inside, so in wardrobes, that's another really common place for cats to rest. Although that brings me kind of onto the final piece, which is hiding spots, which are potentially different again from resting and sleeping places. So hiding is a really important behavior to cats, and hiding is actually probably the most adaptive behavior that cats can show if they're scared of something. So if a cat is worried about something, scared of something, they'll usually go and hide somewhere. They'll find a place to hide. And again, speaking from sort of my own household, if we have somebody coming into the home to do some maintenance or to clean the ACs or something like that, the cat, as soon as the people come in, the cats will be gone. They'll be nowhere to be seen. And sometimes even I don't know where they've gone. And literally the moment that the people have gone, all of a sudden they'll magically reappear from wherever it is that they've hidden. And I know that my older cat, who sadly isn't with us anymore, Vicky, she used to hide behind the washing machine when there were sort of instances like that. And I found that out because I found her there, hiding there one day. But so having hiding spaces that they can easily access is also really, really important, because it's their natural coping style, or the way that they would deal with something that they're frightened of, would be to go and hide somewhere. So it's not actually a bad thing if your cat chooses to hide. It's actually a good thing, as long as that hiding doesn't take on, they don't hide for days on end and don't come back out again, which, that would be a maladaptive or an extreme sort of presentation of that. But if it's really, because something has happened in the home, or there was a loud noise, and it's perfectly understandable and normal for them to be fearful of that, then we have to make sure that they've got somewhere where they can go to hide. And I think another really important thing about those hiding places, if you have a multi-cat household, make sure that they have an entry and an exit area, because if your cat is hiding somewhere and they've gone there to feel safe, the last thing that you want is for another cat to kind of come up to them and either block the entrance or pop their face in there or stick a paw in there to see what they're doing in there. So we have to make sure that there's a second little entrance exit area that they can exit through if they want to. So yeah, I think hiding places are really important. And you'll probably all instinctively think of or about a place where your cat chooses to hide, excuse me, if they're fearful.
I find it's under the covers of the bed sometimes, or behind the pillows. And that seems ideal because actually, if you think of it in my household, anyways, the bed is the resting spot, the bed is a safe place. That is then where they go to hide as well, but very much under things. You'll just see a lump on the blanket and one of the cats trying their best to hide, and you just see this cat-shaped bump on it, which is quite funny. And also drawers of the dresser as well is quite a common one. I think it's important is when they do hide for whatever reason is just to let them come back out on their own. I don't think, as owners, we need to encourage them out from there in any rush. It's when they feel safe and good to come out that they will.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we've almost covered it. So there are a couple of other things. So I mentioned toys earlier. I think we'll leave that one for today. We'll talk about that in a different podcast where we can really deep dive into that whole sort of toys and hunting opportunities, behavior. Nora, you mentioned earlier that sometimes also the person, the owner, the main caregiver, the main bonded person can be a resource. So I think that's probably the last place that we'll visit today before we wrap things up. Do you want to chat about that quickly?
Sure. And I mean, I guess this is the one resource we can't really multiply for cats. And that can be very tricky. And especially if we have multi-cats and only one or two owners in the house. But as their, source of love and food and protection, all these things, we definitely are a resource to cats. And I think being able to give them, our time is really important. And I think I remembered many, many years ago learning if you want to get a cat, you need to be able to put aside at least 30 minutes a day for a cat. Or that's how much time, you need as a minimum to take care of them. And I think it's really important to always remember, even though cats can kind of just become part of our family and they are self-sufficient, that caring for them and having those one-on-one interactions are really, really important. Making sure that they are positive and consistent. Things like brushing, if that's something that your cat is receptive to, is a really lovely way to bond with them. Also, leaving items of yours out. So we definitely have some clients who will bring a shirt that they've worn and that for their cats who come into clinic as a smell of them, as a reminder of them, is really nice if you're going to be away from them for some extended period of time. But I think, and this falls under the pillars too, positive and consistent human interactions. But as cat owners and as veterinary professionals, giving that to our patients and our pets all the time is really important. And, cats tend to like short and frequent interactions. So making sure that you don't spend too much time if they're no longer engaged with it, but that they're short, positive interactions as frequently as you and your cat can do. It's really why we became cat owners.
Absolutely. And what a beautiful place to finish off. So yeah, that was the episode all about feline resources. Nora, you regularly do consultations both in the home, as you've mentioned, but also virtually. And you are available to anybody who would perhaps like to have a bit of a makeover or a preventative treatment plan for their home, for their cats, any kind of environmental sort of enrichment, optimization, basically looking at everything that we've spoken about today from your own personalized perspective for your household. And for your cat's households, Nora is absolutely available to help you with that. So if you would like to get in touch with us, I'm going to put our email address on the bottom that you can contact us through. I'm also going to put the link to a couple of other episodes in this podcast that you will like if you enjoyed this episode. So the one of them I already mentioned, episode 18, about the 5 pillars. But we also have a great episode on the perfect litter tray, which kind of delves a little bit deeper into litter trays. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. But Nora, anything else you'd like to say in regard to consultations with yourself, how that works, how people can get in touch with you, reach you, and how you can help them?
Yeah, I mean, I love doing home visits. I think it's just such a creative opportunity to help optimize the lives of cats in home, but also virtually there's a lot that we can do.
Yeah.
I think that myself included, but we are all always learning more about cats, and I love the opportunity too. But I would say if there's two things to take from cat resources, it would be choice and abundance. Those two things, really, really important for your cats at home.
Amazing. Alrighty. So thank you everybody for listening. And if you are listening from somewhere else in the world outside of the UAE, those virtual consultations are an option for you as well. And, you know, with videos and sort of a little bit of a layout plan of your home, we can absolutely make some amazing recommendations for you. And just to make sure that your cat is living their absolute best lives and that we're meeting all of their behavioral needs. So please feel free to reach out. Again, I'll put the email address in the show notes. And yeah, feel free also to have a listen to those other 2 episodes. So thank you, Nora, for joining me. Again, it's always a pleasure chatting about kitty cats with you. And I look forward to seeing everybody next week for episode 49. Until then, bye for now.